Welcome to the Amelie tunic. This pattern has two different sleeves, long and short, and the fabric was provided by Fab from myfabrics.co.uk or stoffe.de in Deutschland. My patterns don't come as multi-size, but there's one file per size, which makes cutting out ever so easy. I've used a two-way stretch jersey for the ruffle and for the bodice, and I've appliqued circles that came from the lower fabric that you can see in the ruffle onto the dress. I've also used some really lovely blue ribbing. Also, the fabric is from Fab. I can not only say that I was really excited when I worked with those fabrics because they were fabulous. The first thing to do is to check the scale. Is it 5 cm, which is just under 2 inches? And if so, then you've printed it off correctly. It needs to be actual size. You need to select borderless just to make sure you don't cut anything off. Cut out your pattern and then assemble them. First of all, I start by putting everything into different piles. So whatever has an orange flower goes on the orange pile, and whatever has a button on it goes on the button pile. So I don't really need to understand what I'm looking at yet. And once I've done that, I can just put them together, and it'll be very easy to do because it's A, B, C, D and E labeled. So, and also has got this little picture on it, so you can't really go wrong. So once you assemble the pattern, you're ready to go. I've got a front and a back, and the back is slightly bigger than the front because we have got a seam allowance in there which we don't have on the front, which is cut on the fold. You get the two different sleeves. You've got the short sleeve and you've got the long sleeve. In this dress, of course, I'm using, as you can see, the short sleeve, and it's slightly shaped differently on the underarm region. And I'm using a pattern for the ribbing, which is just going to be stretched on. You could use the same pattern for the cuff as well. Or alternatively, of course, you could use the tunnel pattern that I've got here that you can sew on to make it look nice from the outside as well. Or simply turn the lower edge over, turn it in and put an elastic in. Up to you. Now, I've also got ribbing for the top. Again, that's just folded over and put on. So altogether we have front and back. We've got ribbing for the neckline, ribbing for the cuff, the short sleeve, and we're ready to go. So here you can see all the pieces cut out. So we've got the ribbing, we've got front, back, the ruffle, and of course the sleeves. Now we start by putting the ruffle together. So 1 centimeter seam allowance, just sew it together. You will have 2 pieces cut on the fold, so you've got 2 seams. It's easier to put that on as well because you know what the side is then. And then overlock either side. Put some gather threads in from foot width from the edge, and then foot width again, and it's the largest stitch on your sewing machine, and then turn over the lower edge and iron it so it's nice and sharp, and then we're just going to top stitch it. It's not even an inch, it's 1.5 centimeters here, or 2. You don't want this to be too wide because I think that looks really homemade and it's not a look that you want, obviously. So I stitch around once and then I stitch again next to it so that I get this twin needle effect. Of course, you could use a twin needle if you liked. Next, I'm going to apply the Wonder or Bonder web to the area where the circle is, and then cut the circles out. If you then remove the white paper from the back, you can iron that to anywhere you want on your garment. A Raglan works with the sleeves inserted fairly flat, which is really easy, especially if you're a beginner. It's much easier than a fitted sleeve or one which has got a puff sleeve at the top. So what we're going to do is put the ribbing on and just stretch it onto the sleeve first. This is always best to have everything done before you put it together, otherwise you have got all this other fabric there in the way. So stretch it across and pin it. And then on your sewing machine, select the triple stitch, which is the one with the 3 lines. And we want to now stitch this across. It's a stitch which goes forward, backward, forward, forward, backward, forward, etc. so that it stretches, and that is obviously really good. I don't like using little zigzag stitches. I think it does make it look messy and not very professional, so I don't do those. I do the triple stitch. If you haven't got a triple stitch on your sewing machine, obviously you use a slight zigzag. You need to really pull it from the back to make sure that you have got enough stretch in there. And now I can put the other part down and I can overlock it. And the reason I'm not doing it in one go is because it's very easy to slip out, because you can't use needles. If you use a needle or pin under the overlocker and you hit the knife is about £30. What's that, $50? So it's not nice if you have to buy it again because of that. And it makes it so much easier, and you just know it's going to come out perfect. You don't have to like guess and then think, oh, did it come out right? See, it's perfect like that. So you've got the sleeve done, and you can now put the sleeve in like I've just shown you before. So just move the fabric edge to edge. It should fit all very nicely together. There's no need to pin this, but it has to go edge to edge. So no matter how wrong you think it looks while you're doing it, because it's all a wavery edge, isn't it? Then you overlock that edge as well, and you iron the seams towards the body middle, so that if you wanted to top stitch, you could do that. You also want to overlock the center back all the way up. Please ignore that you still got the fastening flaps from the daisy tunic style on there. It would be straight on your pattern. And you can top stitch your seam here, but I didn't do that. I decided to leave that off this time, or let's be truthful, I forgot. So let's iron on our little dots where we want them. And once I've done that, I'm going to stitch around with a triple stitch, same way as I always do. And once that's done, they are securely attached to my garment, and I can now do my side seam, and I do that on the overlocker in one go. And you mustn't put pins in there because you're gonna get them caught one day. Try to do it without. The key is really lining it up well. You could of course at the top stitch it first so that the cuff can't slip, but what I do is I put the cuff, the lower end of the cuff, so that it's like 3 millimeters longer than the other side, and then I just let go, and the overlocker will actually bring them together by the end. It always slips a bit, so as long as you do that, lift the presser foot, turn your fabric over, and then just catch it about 5 mil. It's what, a quarter of an, no, an eighth of an inch, is it? Just catch it there, and that way you've secured it. You can of course leave it hanging and pull it through the overlocking as well to neaten it up. You can do that. I do it like this. Find your own way. So that is really nice, because if you have a centimeter seam allowance on there, you get some tension. Next we're going to do the neckline. So right sides facing, close the ribbing, and make sure that you've got all the markings for where the sleeve starts and ends, because we're now going to put those together, right sides facing, the same as I did with the cuff. I sew it on one side first before I overlock it, stretch it to the next bit. This is why I think this is a bit easier than the facing on the daisy tunic. So this is a slightly easier dress to make, and you stretch it across, and of course there's going to be a lot more gather in the sleeve area than there's at the back and the front. Back to the sewing machine, triple stitch. Oh, I love triple stitch. And we just go all the way around again. Once this is done, you guessed it, yay, we put it on the overlocker and we just overlock the whole lot together. And because you've already done it, it's just so much easier than you know, worrying that you catch the fabric underneath it, because you're just concentrating on too many things at once. Like this, all you have to do is move your fabric out of the way and you can see me here adjusting that and just putting it together. That's all I have to concentrate on. I know I'm not going to cut into my fabric. I know it's not going to slip out because I've got less to concentrate on. That's really important. Right, so now it's together. On your pattern, actually, it'll be much more gathered across the sleeve, so don't be surprised if it is. If you like this look, then just make the ribbing 6 centimeters longer. I didn't have enough gathers for my liking, so I shortened the ribbing for your pattern. Then you want to top stitch all the way around. You could use the triple stitch as well, especially if the ribbing is tighter to the neck. That would be good. And finally, we just have to put on our gathers. And the way you do that is by simply lining up the side seams, the center back and the center front on both your ruffle and your dress. And then do the soul destroying ruffling. I really do hate pulling gathers, and it does take you about 10 minutes. So you're allowed to swear. And once you're done, you just put this on with a triple stitch. And I always think when I'm done, I think, oh, this is really lovely and it's worth it. And I'll do it again. But I have got this total aversion to doing gathers. And if you're the same, you know, just get on with it. Get it done. Grind your teeth. Next, we can remove our gather threads, because the lower one actually only, because it's a little bit in the way, and it's always good to keep your work as tidy as you can. So I leave the top one in because it actually holds the gathers together, which makes it easier when I'm overlocking. So overlocked now, we're ready to top stitch this the same way we top stitch the top. So that looks really nice. I use turquoise again as a contrast color here. And now what's important is I've actually changed the pattern after I made this, because I thought it was a bit too wide at the bottom and I didn't want it to be quite that much volume. So I shortened that. But still, what you want to do is push towards the needle of fabric so that you're holding it in slightly, and then also steam it in at the top so that there is no wobbling. For want of a better word, I call it wobbling, shall I? So you want it to be nice and snug here. And that concludes this dress, really. You could now pop over and watch the daisy tunic. The daisy and Amelie patterns work with each other, so you could mix and match the sleeves and the bodice of the dress. And I've done just that in a whole variation of dresses, which all have videos which will pop up one after the other on my website. So we've got Christmas dresses, and I think they're absolutely gorgeous. But as a piece de la resistance, I've dressed them like princess dresses as well, which was super cute. So thank you for watching Frocks and Frolics.